What do you?
Well, we do have an enemy, but to quote Karl Liebknecht, it's the enemy within. It's the military industrial complex that has no restraint, no control, no regulation. It used to be that under the old Democratic Party, they would at least challenge certain weapons systems. They do not anymore. They, in fact, under Trump, got more money than they even asked for. And any society that allows a military to grow that powerful economically and politically inevitably lurches towards catastrophe. And go read Barbara Tuchman's The Proud Tower on the start of World War I, where in particular it was German militarism in particular, led by the Kaiser, that just precipitated a war that should have never been fought and ended up in suicidal folly for France, Britain, and Germany itself. So why is an out-of-control military so dangerous? If you come out of the military culture, you are historically, culturally, and usually linguistically illiterate. You believe in the myth of whatever civilization, whether it's German chauvinism in World War I or American exceptionalism, and that chauvinism, that sense of exceptionalism, the flip side of that is racism. It's about the denigration of the other. I just actually reread Edward Said's Orientalism, which is precisely about that. It is about, in order to create the mythology of whiteness. Du Bois writes about this. Baldwin writes about this, which is also, of course, a myth. You take a racial characteristic and you endow it with all sorts of virtues. These are completely fictitious. And then you set these virtues against the other. This is very much part of the military culture, because in order to kill, you must dehumanize. You must look at the other not as somebody who has your capacity for empathy, who you turn them into an object. And so the military culture is one that is designed to speak exclusively in the language of force. You don't communicate any other way. You communicate through violence. And because there's been no control, and because we've eviscerated our diplomatic institutions, and when I was overseas, 40% of the embassy was military intelligence, and half the time the ambassador didn't know what the CIA station chief was doing. Go back and read Stephen Kinzer or The Devil's Chessboard by David Talbot to see, what these intelligence service, what this military kind of intelligence industrial complex is about. It is one that has, not just now, but ever since World War II, engaged in torture, extraordinary rendition, kidnapping. This happened under Dulles, Allen Dulles, immediately in the immediate aftermath of World War II. It's not an intelligence gathering service as such. It seeks to overthrow governments, Arbenz in Guatemala, or Mossadegh in Iran, Pinochet in Chile, et cetera, et cetera. So what we have kind of been asleep at the switch on is this military complex with tremendous resources has created a ring around China, the same way they have with Russia. Imagine if we had, the Chinese fleet off the coast of California, or if we had nuclear missiles stationed, within close proximity of the border of the United States. And if you look at the map, John Pilger did a pretty good film on this a few years ago called The Coming War with China. But if you just look at the map, whether it's Okinawa or outside of Australia or the Marshall Islands, China is completely ringed. And what they have done is create a kind of giant rat trap so that if there was a war, they can shut down the shipping lanes and, of course, have a nuclear capacity to obliterate China. But let's be clear, though. I mean, any nuclear war is not going to just obliterate China. It's going to obliterate all of us. Most scientists say that it would create a kind of massive kind of black cloud that would, the entire Earth would be covered in ice for 1 or 2 years. I mean, it's the end of human existence and the existence of most other life forms. Not that, of course, we're slowly getting there, not even slowly anymore through climate change. But societies that can't control their military live deeply to regret it. And so that ethos, that dehumanization, that celebration of fictitious virtues of the white race or whatever imperial race it is you're blessing, which is usually white, is one by the lens by which they look at the entire world. So they don't actually know anything about China. Nationalists always look at other people and see themselves. They see their own lust for violence. They see their own prejudices. I mean, I had famous kind of battles with Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris after 9/11 over these same issues. So, I mean, I spent 7 years in the Middle East. I was the Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times. I'm an Arabic speaker. These people don't know anything about the Middle East. But they don't believe they need to know anything about the Middle East. They don't, and this is what's happening with China. Also Russia. I mean, the difference is China's a harder target because there's so much manufacturing in China. That doesn't mean that, we won't, the military, which has no restraints, we won't be led into a conflict, which I pray to God won't happen. Russia's an easier target. I mean, militarily, compared to the United States, Russia is the Alabama National Guard. I mean, Russia just didn't even have a military of any potency. But the United States encroachment on China parallels the encroachment on Russia. I mean, the whole Crimea issue is really centered around the fact that the United States wanted to establish a naval base in the Crimea and control the Black Sea. Things we would never permit to happen in our own geographical proximity. So the fact that the military is so awash in funding and is so unaccountable, and because of the nature of the military itself, the United States military has become a phenomenally dangerous entity, not only to global world peace, but to American democracy itself. And the Biden administration isn't going to take on, at this point, the defense contractors. I mean, look, we have 20 years in the Middle East of endless war, which have been a complete catastrophe, certainly first and foremost to the people in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Libya and everywhere else. But it's just been an utter failure. I mean, it is, and yet nobody's held accountable. The generals all get promoted, and then when they retire, they all go to Raytheon, and then after a new administration, they go from Raytheon back to the Defense Department. It's utterly incestuous. Every cruise missile, I believe, costs about $1 million. So, let's drop, how many cruise missiles did we drop on Libya? Quite a few. And then they make more. I mean, there's no rationale to continue these conflicts, except that war is a business. They make a lot of money. So yes, I think you're right, and I worry about it, because you don't want foreign policy left in the hands of generals, and because they will do what they're trained to do, and that is inch you closer and closer to a conflict, even if that conflict is suicidal.